see if this works.
With the Health Committee, we've got a couple of other members here and online as well. We have you for 5 minutes. Thank you for your submission. You may use that time as you wish. I'll hand that to you now. Thank you, Oz.
Morena, can you hear me okay?
Got you.
Tēnā koutou e nea ko mihi ka koutou na me mai tēnei komiti. Na me mai te whare paremata tēnā koutou tēnā tāta ko tēnei mihi atu nei kia koutou mai Taranaki, whiti mai ana te rā. Rangi moko puna no reira tēnā tāta kia kahaki a Maia. I'm speaking to you from Pungarehu in Taranaki. I'm one of the kai whakahaere of the Parihaka Mara, the Parihaka Community Garden on coastal Taranaki. Been growing food for about 20 years for the community. This year we grew 2 tons of potatoes for Te Matatini to support the Pohiri, to support the Ropu staying at the marae. Our life is revolves around kai, revolves around food. I'm a kaiako at te whare wānanga o Awanuiarangi teaching 27. I'm a kaiako at te whare wānanga o Awanuiarangi teaching 27 students in organic hua parakore marakai activities. So I consider myself to be knowledgeable on this kaupapa when it comes to genetic modification. I'm utterly opposed to the bill as it stands. In my hand, I don't know if I can turn my camera around, but in my hand I'm holding a bunch of seeds for you today. This is a variety called turtle beans, a bush bean variety that we've been given about 15 years ago by our friend Sam. We've been growing it out every season since. It's an old variety. Turtle bean suggests it's from the Turtle Islands, that big island also known as America. It's a bean very dear to us. It's yum ass. It stores well. It grows really well in windy conditions because it doesn't grow too tall. It's prolific. The seeds are small, but they swell up once you cook them. To us, this is a taonga. The taonga we've been looking after for these years, and a taonga we don't want anyone to tutu with. A taonga that's been developed by generations of seed growers from the Americas and then brought to Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is one of four bush bean varieties that we look after. Our concern is that the introduction of genetic modification into the environment means that those of us who look after seed, who save seed for the community, have no more the ability to look after these taonga. We're at the mercy at that point of corporations who have patents over these taonga for corporate profit. That's why I'm holding these seeds to you. I've got buckets and bins and buckets of seed surrounding me, because seed is what the Mara is about. We look after these bean seeds, but we also have other lines of seed that we look after for the community. My point to you is that I don't believe the same corporates who are pushing this agenda like they did during the Royal Commission of Inquiry 25 years ago. It's the same crew pushing this, and they still don't have a social license. On the hearing on Thursday, I was listening in a little bit. The discussion was that only if we could do a little bit of GE and then the corporations could gain a social license. That is absolutely a ridiculous statement. There is, just like with the nuclear issue, no social license for genetic modification in this country, and we should ensure that our environment stays pristine like it is. We have an opportunity here to keep GE out, given that we're an island nation, so we should keep doing that. We're in a meta crisis. We have the climate crisis, social crisis, the biodiversity loss, and obviously political crises across the world. We should not go to these solutions pushed by corporates for corporate interest and corporate greed. Instead, we should be looking to small-scale farming. I'm not surprised that big corporate farming lobby groups are pushing this. However, the world is dominated by small-scale growers like us, people who grow kai on a couple of acres, maybe a couple of hectares. That is, by and large, the history of farming across the globe. It is small growers that are doing everything for biodiversity. It's small growers that keep lines of seed alive, and that is why we are defending this nation from genetic modification. It doesn't matter whether it's SDN1, SDN2, whatever it is. We don't support the release of genetically modified products into the environment. Finally, my last point is this. I'm surprised that this government, who's been talking a lot about localism and the devolution of power, is actively in this bill preventing local councils from having a say around genetic modification and the release of genetically modified organisms into regions. At the moment, my understanding is at least 2 regions have made use of those provisions. To remove those provisions goes against what you tell us that you stand for, and instead you're siding with the corporates and with corporate greed. Those are my words to you this morning. I hope you listen carefully to the many great submissions that follow me today. People like Health, Organic NZ, people like Hua Parakore, people who know this field inside out, rather than just listening to the corporate lobbyists.
No, thanks, Oz.
We have a financial gain to make. Kia ora tata.
Thanks, Oz. We aren't listening to wealthy corporate lobbyists. This is intended to get better health and environmental and productivity gains throughout. It's not what it was 20 years ago. This is gene editing. Look, we're at time, but I just want to say thank you for your submission, and all the best to you all down there in Taranaki. Kia ora.
They are just listening to the big companies. At least, to be fair on Sam, right up to the select committee started, the bill has been written by those companies and designed and informed by those people. It's not had a really inclusive kind of conversation with Māori or with growers or with farmers or with exporters or the community. So, but to be fair, that's right, Sam and the committee are hearing this stuff. So it's really on their shoulders. Do they hear it? Do they just listen and cut people off and say goodbye? Or do they actually integrate it? And do the officers and the support staff behind them reading this stuff, do they actually listen and take this on board? And it's problematic. The last comment that Sam makes is, oh, this is gene editing. It's not, it's 25 years on. let's be really clear. Yes, the technology has evolved. It's actually very similar technology, but slightly different, more targeted. Absolutely. What's not changed is the environment and nature. And they can do these things. They can do almost anything they want, quite simply with this CRISPR technology. But what the impact onto the natural system and the complexity of nature has just not been considered. And in New Zealand, this bill goes much further. It's not just in gene-edited plants that Sam Uffindale seems to be suggesting. It's just a little bit of gene editing.
Yeah.
It's microorganisms, it's fungi, it's viruses and animals, much more inclusive or expansive than any other regulatory system in the world. And microbes and bacteria and fungi are very impossible to control. So to open that door for these exempted, again, I'll go back to the point I made earlier about this, the things that are not in the bill. So what the conversation from ERS was they're planning to exempt from any regulation, and it's going to be left up to the companies for what they call this SDN1 and SDN2 changes. Small little changes that have been done, arguably almost like they could have happened in nature. But as Professor Heinemann says, it didn't happen in nature. It's a different process, similar but not the same, with different risk profiles. So I actually loved what ERS was saying. He was highlighting the really big thing, because it's all about the money. If I forget to mention that at any point in any of this of the submissions in my time with you, just remind me, oh no, John, it's all about the money. It's all about the money and the patenting of life forms and the patenting of seeds and the prevention of access to diversity of natural seeds, stopping people saving seeds ultimately, not immediately, but in the future. That's kind of the trajectory that this bill takes us on. It does give in to big powerful companies. The guy is 100% right. And of course, diversity is key, the opposite of monocultures. And of course, there are scientists who will say, oh, no, we could do stuff to help poor farmers and even local farmers, our farmers. As someone mentioned earlier, the most recent Farmers Weekly poll showed that 75% of farmers are saying the GE thing isn't probably going to help us do exports and do what we need to do into the future. So I think that's a good sign, because they must want, I mean, seriously, they must want something else than what they're getting, which is more artificial inputs, more licensing fees. That they should be looking to what the organic farmers have learned globally but locally, and starting to shift and be given that support, which is why we need a food strategy, which is why Ursula's absolutely right. Seed saving, local diverse communities growing food. And that's not all. I mean, we probably need a bit of everything in a way. That's what diversity is about. But what you can't have is unregulated genetic engineering in the open environment and that direction at the same time. You've got to find the middle path, which is probably to keep GE in the lab and in containment, and use those other systems-based improvements like organic, like agroecology, like marker-assisted breeding that doesn't genetically engineer the animal but can show you the best way to go. All the tools we've got, like omics, full genome sequencing, all of these tools are getting cheaper to regulate this stuff.
Yep.
So to deregulate it and to exclude from regulation is really not necessary. It's cheap as chips to make sure that this is what you say it is. And that's what, again, Professor Jack Heinemann says. It's not just gene editing. It's just gene editing when you've shown it's that. It is shown to be what you think it is.
Yeah, I mean, these mutations, I mean, that you're looking at, like with and I've got my notes down here because I did a bunch of reading for the show. Yeah, SDN1 and SDN2. That's not really occurring out in the environment, right? It's a highly selective process that requires a laboratory. So you get a whole bunch of controls in place. It's not just random mutations left, right, center. It's a selective process. But I think
to be fair, Laura, that's what they're saying. So that's actually the argument, that this is going to be in the lab. It's going to be regulated, even if it's just the companies. But one of the debates, we'll go on to the next video because it's not all about me, Kevin was say, but I'm happy to have this say. One of the debates is that it has to be in this lab, and it's not going to be anybody who can do a bit of CRISPRing. Well, that's not the case. I mean, you can do CRISPR kits, you can get them online. As Jack Heinemann explains, Professor Jack Heinemann, people in their kitchen, if they were to get one of these kits and play around, they're not experts. They're not controlling and stopping contamination of things they didn't mean to gene edit. So those little kits can accidentally gene edit things like your common cold or something else that's floating in the atmosphere. That's my understanding. But it's got much cleverer than that. And I was challenged by this. At the end of my personal submission, the chair of the committee said, "Oh, but John, you seem confused. I mean, what kind of technology can genetically modify a plant in the environment?" And I said, well, what they've developed are these new kind of pesticides, which are active gene editors. So they are the thing that gene edits in the open environment, usually combined with nanotechnology and microscopic carbon particles to penetrate the cells, to survive in the environment, and to gene edit. In some cases, it will be a plant or it might be a particular insect. And I managed to just get out before we cover it off. And the problem is, it's not about them being genetically modified. It's about accidentally gene editing another plant or another organism or another insect. I didn't say you genetically modify that insect, but you've destroyed its potentially its life by gene editing it accidentally. So this is the kind of nasty little games that some of the questions being asked are kind of playing. And it's a little bit unfair when I say, it's saying to people, "Oh, why are you unhappy about GE? Because some plants were done with the mutagenesis 20 years ago," or something like that. That's basically the argument. It's really trying to position the public as misinformed, confused, stupid. How can this technology exist? It does exist. They don't know. These experts don't know what's going on in America and patents that have been applied for, and the pipeline of new products that are being envisaged in the world. The fact that in America you've got modified soil microbes being marketed to the world, or to their farmers, whereas in New Zealand we've got great scientists like at Lincoln University researching naturally occurring fungi in this case and doing a product based on nature, working with nature. But once you say, "Oh, we can just genetically engineer this and have a patent on it," and really ratcheting up the battle against nature, once it's in the environment, once this pride of this new technology that you can do so many things with, they seem to have forgotten they're not experts in ecology. They're experts in gene editing in a lab. And once you go into nature, then you've got to have these different experts. Like
of course. Yeah, because now you're in an uncontrolled environment. And I didn't know about the CRISPR kits that you could buy online. That's like, okay.
Christmas is coming. I mean, don't worry, it's a few months away, but you might get one. No, it's outrageous. To be fair, in this bill, somewhere deep down to the back end of it, there is a line that forbids the sale of gene sequencing machinery. Actually, it does say you have to have a license to have it somewhere. I might have got the details of the wording wrong, but essentially I was, well, that's an amazing good thing in this bill.
Yeah. So going over the regulatory impact statement, the things that they said they're not going to regulate for is the things that they deem to be minimal risk. And I don't know if the CRISPR kits fall under that.
Well, the kits don't. Well, as I said, I think they've got this to say you can't sell them. They have to have a license to sell them. But the problem is the outcomes do. The outcomes are kind of like uncontrolled wherever they're being used. And I guess the point is that absolutely, professional scientists like Professor Jack Heinemann in a lab doing it. But as I say, even that is not enough once you take it outside of the lab where you've got nature to deal with or not. And that's the issue. They don't want to deal with nature. They're happy to damage nature if it doesn't seem really obvious that they're doing that. Whereas precaution is the thing that is really needed when you're talking about these really advanced technologies entering nature. And we're talking about GE, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, AI, combinations of these things, clever stuff, way ahead. I mean, AI is much cleverer, will soon will be, than any of the scientists who are debating this. And so then you have to say, well, what are the guardrails around really clever AI designing a really clever microbe that could do something really clever in nature that we all want to stop climate change, for example, and it making a mistake. And so precaution has always been that do no harm kind of thing that has been the social license. Actually, it's been the underpinning of the social license to date. You're not trying to do harm. That's great. To take that away, which is what that RIS, that regulatory impact, and to be honest, not just in there, but some of the documents that released from the ministry meetings and the OIAs, the Official Information Act documents, they showed that there was deliberate direction to say drop precaution. And as somebody said earlier, it's not just the regulator at this top of this bill will not have to be precautious, but they're actually taking away the right of other people to be precautious, like councils. Now that's really, really wrong. It really is. And I've challenged the Auckland Council, not to much success. So if anyone's watching this in Auckland, please contact Mayor Wade Brown, and please contact your local board, because what happened over 20 or 15 years ago is that, less than 10 to 15 years ago, is that councils got together on the current law, let alone the new one that takes away these protections, and said, look, we could be up for costs. There was a company that went bankrupt 20 years ago, then all the sheep, the GE sheep, had to be destroyed at public money. And so this, and there's no financial there's no requirement for any company to prove financial fitness in this bill. So it really opens up little startups to do anything they want and maybe get away with something without having to be liable. And so councils, including Auckland and Northland and Hastings, they put in these precautionary principles. In some cases, to actually stop GE, it's not banned, but there's some extra. You've got to have a record of it. You've got to put a bond down for it. You've got to apply for it. All of these extra precautions locally. But I haven't been arguing with the councillors. In fact, I wasn't allowed to argue. I was banned from speaking because they said it was like not on. The Auckland plans are not part of the remit of the Auckland Planning and Policy Committee. And I said, well, how can they not be? That's the plans. It's not. It's outside of our remit. You're not allowed to talk. It doesn't matter. It does matter in a way, because it's sad that democracy is being mistreated so badly.
Yeah.
But I was just asking them to look at what was in the plan and defend it. And that's what they refused to do at this stage. So if you can contact anyone who knows the mayor, and also, as I say, local boards, to say you've got to defend democracy. This is not about protecting GE-free zones. This is about stopping liability and costs being imposed on ratepayers. That's certainly the angle I'm playing with the councillors in Auckland, because it's all about the money, Laura, and that's why I thought, well, I would point out that, where's ACT on this? Why isn't ACT speaking up on this, saying you've got to protect the rights of people not to be contaminated? You've got to protect the rights of ratepayers not to pay out for some company that's gone bankrupt and polluted the environment.
Yeah, I mean, and we see too, like in the regulatory impact statement, just to tie it back to the submission, Māori were not really consulted about this.
Worse. The committee they've been given has got no decision-making power at all. They modelled it on a current committee and said, but before you model it on the current committee that's in the Plant Variance Act, take away any power while you model on it. Take that model, but give it no power. So I did see a slightly, aggressive kind of comment, Maori are getting a special treatment with this committee. I didn't answer it, but I did want to mention, look, don't worry, they're being shafted as much as anybody in this bill. No one's getting away with it except the big industry people who wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't say you're going to uphold the Treaty Waitangi and then not consult Māori. It's like, how does that work? Okay. Exactly. So with that, shall we watch the next video?
Please.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, News Guide, The Order Paper Podcast.